I'd like to talk a bit about the right wing's idea that the Constitution, the original Constitution, is perfect and the Founding Fathers were infallible. The Constitution is a flawed document because it's a compromise. It's a compromise because the Founding Fathers are human beings, or were human beings, who therefore were flawed and had to deal with social issues, economic issues, and political issues. When they showed up to write the Constitution, there were a lot of different ideas floated. One of them was instituting a national religion, which was shot down fairly quickly considering the reason for our country's founding in the first place. Another one was to establish a constitutional monarchy, like they have in England now, and install George Washington as our first king. That was also shot down fairly quickly. However, an issue that really divided them was slavery. The southern states, which had great economic and political power at that time, they wanted to keep slavery. Now, some of the other states, they wanted to ban slavery. So they did a deal with the devil, so to speak, and struck a compromise that in the Constitution it says black people are 3/5 of a human being. Now, I'm not sure what the anti-slavery people thought they were getting out of this wording, because all it did was, in effect, allow slavery until the Civil War finally settled that issue. But as you can see, that's a flaw. I consider that a flaw when you count people as 3/5 of a human being. Okay? And the people who put that in there and then signed off on it are flawed. Now, another one, the other one that I'm going to talk about, is there is no mention of women's rights in the Constitution. Now, many of these men were not only educated, but they had traveled to Europe and they'd seen areas where women had rights, could have property, their own money, hold positions of authority. So they knew that this wasn't something that was foundationally impossible, that other places allowed women to do this, and they knew that probably it was the right thing to do. But because a lot of the men who were there didn't want their women folk getting uppity, they just sidestepped it. So no mention of it. So in effect, they disenfranchised half of the population by simply not mentioning them. Now, I would consider that a flaw. And I would consider the people who signed off on that flawed. Now, before too many right-wing heads explode, I have great respect for our original Constitution and our Founding Fathers, because for their time, they were enlightened, relatively speaking, and they did amazing things. And the Constitution itself is an amazing document for its time. But they also went against what they knew was right. The ones who knew that slavery was wrong allowed this. The ones who knew that women should have rights allowed this. And they signed off on it. Now, there is absolute and incontrovertible proof that these men knew that this Constitution was a flawed document. And that is that within the Constitution itself, there is a method whereby the Constitution can be amended. Now, if you think that you've written a perfect document, you do not include in that document a method to amend it. The Bible does not have a section for amending the Bible, because the people who read the Bible and believe the Bible think it is perfect. But these men knew that this document was not perfect, and they knew that it was going to have to be amended. And they knew that eventually things were going to change, and that this document was going to have to change with the times, with changes in society, in situations. So they included that. So what we have is a compromise document that has flaws, written by human beings with obvious flaws in it, that also contains a method to get rid of the mistakes that they knew were in there. So anytime you see or hear some right-winger talking about they want to return to the original Constitution, ask them why they want to return blacks to slavery and they want to take away women's right to vote and own property, because that's what they'd be doing. And also ask them why, if they think that document is so perfect, did the Founding Fathers put a method to amend the Constitution in it? Because these right-wingers who think the Constitution as it was first written was perfect obviously don't agree with the Founding Fathers, who they seem to think are infallible and holy, who knew that it did have to be changed. And before I ramble further, I hope that I've made my point, and I thank you for listening.